So imagine you are sitting down with your favorite drink, and I start telling you about this fascinating moment in Hollywood that had everyone whispering and scrolling, and wondering what really goes on behind the glamour. Because recently, something wild surfaced about Blake Lively and her unsigned IEWU contract that had people gasping, not because of scandal, but because of the incredible bonuses linked to an Oscar win, which just made everyone realize how much hope, belief, and ambition are baked into this industry. You see, Blake has always carried that aura of grace mixed with fierce determination from her breakout days on Gossip Girl to her elegant film roles. She has been the kind of star who balances red carpet magic with genuine warmth. And now, with this IEWU story floating around, fans can't stop admiring how she navigates fame with intelligence and calm. The unsigned contract was like a symbol of what so many artists go through moments where opportunity knocks. But the path is still being written, and people started talking about those Oscar bonuses and imagining how cool it must feel to have that kind of dream embedded in paper. Even if unsigned, it represents potential. It represents that thrilling what-if moment that fuels every creative person in Hollywood and beyond. And when you think about Blake, you can't help but think about Ryan Reynolds too. Her husband, who built his empire from small quirky films to owning a gin company to becoming one of the most beloved figures in entertainment. Both of them show how teamwork and humor can turn challenges into legacy. And speaking of legacies, the whole thing makes me think about how many other celebrities started from humble beginnings chasing dreams that felt impossible, like Jennifer Lopez, who went from a dancer on In Living Color to being an actress, singer, business mogul, an inspiration for millions, or like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who once had only $7 in his pocket and turned that into a billion-dollar career powered by grit, charm, and relentless positivity. These stories are all woven together by a single thread that glows with resilience. Every one of them faced rejection. Every one of them had to prove themselves in a world that can lift you up and break you down in the same week, and yet they kept going because deep down they believed their story wasn't done being written. And when I think about that unsigned contract of Blake Lively, I imagine it not as a piece of paper, but as a metaphor for unfinished dreams waiting for the right time to bloom. The entertainment world is full of those nearly moments where something beautiful almost happens, and then something else even more magical unfolds instead. Like, think about Lady Gaga before the fame, when she was performing in small clubs wearing outfits she made herself, and telling her friends one day, "I'm going to perform for thousands." She didn't know that thousands would turn into millions, or that she'd win an Oscar for Shallow, and stand on that stage crying with gratitude. That same energy lives in every creative person. The spark that says maybe not yet, but soon. It's that electric mix of doubt and hope that makes the journey worthwhile. And as we glide from Blake's Hollywood hills to the bright lights of Seoul, we see similar stories like BTS rising from a small company that no one took seriously to becoming one of the most powerful music groups in history. Their story, like Blake's, is about defying expectation and believing in teamwork and artistry and speaking truth through creativity. It's crazy how success stories repeat in patterns across different cultures because deep down the emotions are the same. The fear of failure, the thrill of success, the quiet nights of work that no one sees. And then suddenly that one big break. And for Blake, maybe IEWU wasn't about the contract at all. Maybe it was about standing in that liminal space where you are reminded of your worth, reminded that success isn't defined by signatures or awards, but by the courage to wait for what feels right. Her journey reminds me of how Taylor Swift reclaimed her masters, how she turned pain into art and business, savvy turning the word fearless into a brand of empowerment and independence. And it's funny because these artists connect in ways that feel like a constellation, each shining in their lane, but together forming a bigger story about perseverance and evolution. Like Robert Downey Jr., who went from struggling with addiction to becoming Iron Man, one of the most iconic roles of all time, and now stands as a living example that no matter how deep the darkness, you can rewrite your script. The same goes for Selena Gomez, who turned her mental health journey into advocacy and art, inspiring millions to speak up and take care of themselves. It's powerful when fame turns into a platform for kindness and hope. And Blake Lively has always carried that essence. She isn't just acting. She's building brands, supporting creativity, celebrating motherhood, and balancing it all with grace. And that makes her unsigned contract feel poetic. Almost like she's choosing the right time, the right project, and the right energy for her next evolution. And speaking of evolution, Look at Zendaya, how she transformed from a Disney Channel teen star into an Emmy-winning actress and fashion icon, breaking barriers with every red carpet moment she touches. She is proof that authenticity and patience can take you further than shortcuts. And that's the same energy that flows through artists like Leonardo DiCaprio, who waited decades for his Oscar. Not because he wasn't good enough, but because timing and destiny have their own rhythm. It reminds us that success is not a race, it's a dance, and each step teaches you something about yourself, about gratitude, about humility. And when we look beyond Hollywood to legends like Shakira, who started singing in Colombia at age 13 and ended up performing at the Super Bowl, it's like watching dreams expand across continents, showing that talent knows no borders. And even when challenges come, like public scrutiny or personal heartbreak, these stars keep reinventing themselves, proving that light is stronger than the shadows. And the reason these stories move us isn't just because they're famous, but because they're human. They cry, they doubt, they stumble, but they keep rising. And that's what keeps us watching and cheering and dreaming, because we see a piece of ourselves in their climb, whether it's Blake standing firm with an unsigned contract, or someone like Keanu Reeves, known for his humility, kindness, and quiet generosity after facing immense loss, yet still choosing to create art that touches hearts worldwide. Every one of these lives is a reminder that the real bonus isn't tied to an Oscar or a paycheck, but to the fulfillment that comes from staying true to your path. And if you think about it, maybe the Oscar clause in Blake's IEWU deal wasn't about money at all. Maybe it was about vision, about saying, I believe in myself enough to imagine victory. Because when you dare to picture success, you are already halfway there. And speaking of imagination, who could forget Oprah Winfrey, starting as a local news anchor, facing rejection after rejection, only to become one of the most influential women on earth, turning vulnerability into strength and connection. Her story, just like Blake's moment with IEWU, shows that power doesn't come from contracts. It comes from self-belief and consistency. And from there, the story moves effortlessly across generations, from legends like Meryl Streep, who shows that grace never goes out of style, to new voices like Timothée Chalamet, who bring sensitivity to every role, reminding us that art is not about perfection, but about truth and heart. And as we keep scrolling through these stories, it's like flipping through a living album of passion and courage. And even though we started with one unsigned contract, we end up realizing we've been traveling through decades of dreams, all fueled by the same heartbeat, the belief that something extraordinary can come from the most unexpected places. And if you're listening right now, maybe you feel inspired. Maybe you feel that tingle that says your story too is still being written. And who knows, maybe your version of that unsigned contract is just waiting to become the start of something timeless, because just like Blake and every dreamer before her, your name, your work, your journey matter. All right, so as we drift into the next chapter of this flowing story that started with Blake Lively and that unsigned IEWU contract and those whispers of Oscar dreams, we realize that what makes these stories so magnetic is not the paperwork or the trophies, but the pulse of passion that beats behind every great name. Because fame isn't just about cameras flashing, it's about the courage to step into uncertainty and believe that your art will find its place in the world. Blake has always radiated that kind of calm confidence. She smiles like someone who knows her worth and still chooses to grow and explore, and that makes people connect to her journey like a friend they've known for years. And speaking of journeys, I can't help but think of how similar threads weave through so many stories around the world, like Priyanka Chopra, who started as a young beauty queen in India and turned that crown into a global career, bridging Bollywood and Hollywood with elegance and resilience. Her story reminds us that boundaries are illusions, and talent doesn't need permission to shine. And when you think about her stepping into American television with Quantico and then becoming a producer and entrepreneur, it mirrors the same fearless energy that Blake carries, the willingness to reinvent and evolve again and again. And as the camera pans across continents, we find ourselves in the heart of Africa, where stars like Burna Boy and Lupita Nyong'o remind us that representation is power, that when you bring your authentic self to the stage, the world listens. Burna Boy, with his Grammy win, proved that African music belongs at the global table, and Lupita, with her Oscar-winning performance in 12 Years a Slave, showed that grace and depth can break barriers and shift narratives forever. And if you think about it, these stories feel connected by invisible threads, the kind that tie dreams from one corner of the planet to another, reminding us that success doesn't have a single accent or address. It just flows wherever passion lives. And when I think back to Blake's quiet confidence, I imagine her flipping through that unsigned IEWU contract with the kind of peace that says, "I'll sign when it feels right." And that kind of patience is rare in a world obsessed with. Now it's like she embodies the art of timing, just as Matthew McConaughey did when he took a break from romantic comedies and waited until the right dramatic roles came calling the moment. He said, "All right, all right, all right," became a cultural phrase. But behind that, laid years of perseverance and faith in the process, and faith that's the common thread. Right from Beyoncé, crafting her art in silence before dropping surprise albums that shake the world, to Tom Holland humbly balancing Spider-Man fame with gratitude and discipline. Every one of them shows that the biggest wins often come after moments of stillness, moments of waiting for that spark that says, "Go," and speaking of sparks, have you noticed how every era brings a new wave of dreamers who redefine what fame looks like? Like Billie Eilish, who turned her bedroom into a recording studio with her brother Phineas and ended up sweeping Grammys. Their story feels like a modern fairy tale born from authenticity and connection, proving that raw honesty will always find an audience, and that honesty is what keeps the entertainment world alive through ups and downs, like Britney Spears, who despite every challenge, came back stronger, owning her voice and her freedom, inspiring millions to fight for their own strength and dignity. And it's moments like that when fans cry, not because of fame, but because they see courage and they think, maybe I can rise too. That's the magic of storytelling, the reason we listen, the reason we watch. Because somewhere deep inside, we crave proof that hope works, that talent matters, that persistence wins. And when we zoom back into the energy of Blake's story, the Oscar bonus feels less like a financial clause and more like a whisper from the universe saying, "You are capable of greatness," and whether she ever signs it or not. The message is already written in her career, the balance of beauty, intelligence, and creativity. That makes her a force of nature. And then you have legends like Will Smith, who taught us that resilience and redemption can coexist. His journey from Fresh Prince to global superstar to author has been filled with lessons about growth, forgiveness, and authenticity. And then across the ocean, there's Emma Watson, who transformed from a child actor into an advocate for gender equality, showing the world that influence can be used to lift others. And that's what I love about all these interconnected lives. They remind us that purpose is the real prize, that the glitz fades, but the impact stays. And just when you think you've seen it all, someone new rises from nowhere, like a spark in the dark. Like how Dua Lipa went from working at a restaurant to topping charts worldwide, or how Simulu went from stock photos to Marvel superhero, proving that destiny sometimes hides in the most unexpected places. These transitions are what make life cinematic, and every comeback feels like a standing ovation for the human spirit. And speaking of comebacks, who could forget Brendan Fraser? His return to the spotlight brought tears to millions who remembered his early days and saw his quiet humility through the years. His Oscar win wasn't just a trophy. It was a collective celebration of endurance and kindness. And maybe that's what the Blake Lively IEWU story really captures, that idea that timing and belief are everything, that sometimes walking away or waiting is a power move, not a loss, because the universe has perfect rhythm. And those who trust it eventually find themselves exactly where they belong. Like Jennifer Lawrence taking a break from fame to reconnect with her roots, then returning with a new sense of purpose. Or like Rihanna turning from singer to billionaire entrepreneur, redefining beauty standards across the world. All these stories are like chapters in a massive book, written by courage and creativity, and we are lucky enough to read them live. And as we glide through these names, the narrative feels endless. One artist's pause becomes another's breakthrough. One unsigned deal becomes another's defining moment. And through it all, we see how dreams evolve over time, from humble beginnings to dazzling heights, like Chris Hemsworth surfing in Australia before becoming Thor, or Zendaya standing shyly on a Disney set before walking the Met Gala as the future of fashion. Every one of them started somewhere small, believing in something big. And isn't that the heart of every success story, that moment when you say, maybe, just maybe, I can do it too? And the more you listen, the more you realize this isn't just about celebrities, it's about us, about the way we hope and hustle, and sometimes doubt, but still push forward. And that's what makes this entire journey feel so alive, because whether it's Blake holding that unsigned paper, or a kid writing songs in a notebook, or an athlete training in silence, the core emotion is the same, the fire that says, I am not done yet. And as we keep moving through this ever-expanding constellation of talent, from Taylor Swift's poetic revenge arcs, to Zendaya's timeless elegance, to the unbreakable optimism of stars like Jason Momoa, who turns every interview into a celebration of life. You can feel that Hollywood and the wider world of entertainment are not just factories of fame. They are gardens of perseverance, where every dream that dares to grow becomes a story that others can hold on to, and maybe that's why we watch. Maybe that's why we scroll. Maybe that's why we keep listening, because in the end, we aren't just hearing about contracts or Oscars or premieres. We're hearing about hope made visible, about what happens when you don't give up and you let your own version of the unsigned contract become a symbol not of hesitation, but of infinite possibility. And as we continue drifting through this tapestry of dreams and determination that started with Blake Lively and that unsigned IEWU contract, we begin to see how every story, no matter where it begins, carries echoes of hope and lessons in resilience. Because when you look at Blake standing poised with her potential Oscar bonuses, it's less about numbers and more about the courage to imagine success even before it is officially acknowledged. And that same energy is alive in icons across the globe, like Cristiano Ronaldo, who went from dusty streets in Madeira to becoming one of the most celebrated footballers of all time, showing the world that discipline, dedication, and belief can turn a small boy with a ball into a living legend. And then we see the stories of musicians like Adele, whose powerful voice carried her from soulful nights in London pubs to stages like the Grammys and the Oscars, proving that raw talent paired with vulnerability resonates universally. And what ties all these journeys together is the willingness to embrace struggle as part of the process, to see setbacks not as failures, but as recalibration points, like Tom Hanks, who after early rejection carved a career spanning decades filled with beloved roles and immense cultural impact, or like Lupita Nyong'o, who navigated international stardom while staying true to her heritage and using her platform to elevate voices that often go unheard. And when we reflect on Blake's unsigned contract, we can almost imagine it as a microcosm of this entire journey: the patience, the self-belief, the vision for what's possible that hasn't yet manifested. And it's inspiring because it reminds us that success is rarely a straight line. It's a series of zigzags and detours and unexpected blessings that, when pieced together, form something extraordinary. And if we turn the lens to Japan, we find similar stories in stars like Naomi Osaka, who despite immense pressure and expectations broke records in tennis while speaking openly about mental health, showing that vulnerability can be powerful and transformative. And then there's Malala Yousafzai, whose courage in the face of unimaginable adversity earned her a Nobel Peace Prize and reminds us that influence comes in many forms, and sometimes the bravest act is simply showing up and staying committed to your values. And when you follow these threads across continents and industries, you start to see patterns of excellence paired with humility, people who rise not by stepping on others, but by lifting themselves and their communities. And that's what makes Blake's story with IEWU so relatable, because it's not just about glamour, it's about intention and timing. It's about knowing that you are worthy and letting life unfold in its own rhythm. And as we glide back to Hollywood, we see stories like that of Keira Knightley, who started as a young actress in London and became a global icon through talent persistence, and a touch of fearlessness, or like Robert Pattinson, who navigated Twilight fame and then reinvented himself as an acclaimed actor, embracing challenging roles, showing that reinvention is a hallmark of longevity and creativity. And then you think about Lin-Manuel Miranda, who transformed Hamilton from a passion project into a worldwide phenomenon, proving that vision paired with relentless effort can change the cultural landscape. And Blake Lively, in her own quiet way, reflects that same philosophy, choosing projects that challenge her while also nurturing her family and personal growth. And it's remarkable how these individual choices ripple outward, shaping not just careers, but inspiring millions to dream bigger and believe in themselves. And speaking of belief, we can't forget icons like Oprah Winfrey, who turned childhood adversity into a media empire and now uses her influence to empower countless others. Her story mirrors the silent strength we see in Blake's IEWU moment, the knowledge that sometimes the most powerful moves are made behind the scenes. And then we journey to Africa, where artists like Wizkid and Tiwa Savage show that global impact can rise from local roots, that when talent is nurtured and given a platform, the results can redefine international music and culture. And it's fascinating to notice that whether it's Hollywood K-pop or Afrobeat, the principles remain universal: passion, persistence, and purpose. These same principles guided Blake through her career, shaping every red carpet moment, every brand launch, every meticulously chosen role. And the unsigned contract is almost like a bookmark in a story that is still unfolding, reminding us all that patience can be as rewarding as the prize itself. And when you think of the early careers of stars like Timothée Chalamet, who took theater and small indie films seriously before becoming a household name, or Florence Pugh, who quietly honed her craft before exploding onto the global scene with mesmerizing performances, it reinforces the idea that preparation and vision matter as much as opportunity and luck. And then we circle back to music, where Adele and Billie Eilish and Ed Sheeran remind us that connecting to audiences through authenticity and heart creates a lasting legacy that no contract or award alone can replicate. And every one of these journeys intersects in a web of inspiration, like Jennifer Lopez balancing music, film, and entrepreneurship, or Priyanka Chopra bridging continents, showing that impact is not limited to one arena. And when we reflect on Blake's IEWU story, it becomes a symbol of this very ecosystem. The space where hope meets strategy, where talent meets timing, where dreams sit quietly waiting for the right moment to bloom. And as the narrative flows across decades and continents, we encounter stories like Dwayne Johnson, rising from $7 to global stardom, or Keanu Reeves, whose humility and kindness have touched millions alongside cinematic brilliance, showing that character matters as much as skill, and that humanity shines brightest when it is intertwined with talent. And then there's the quiet brilliance of Zendaya, who seamlessly transitions from Disney teen star to Emmy-winning actress, proving that youth and authenticity can coexist with poise and influence. And if we expand further, we see the journey of BTS breaking barriers as a K-pop group, achieving global domination through artistry, dedication, and connection, reminding us that storytelling is universal, that emotion transcends borders. And when we look at Blake in the lens of all these parallel stories, we see someone who curates her career with intention, who steps into projects not just for fame, but for resonance, who lets the unsigned contract speak not of uncertainty, but of possibility. And then we witness the echo of these stories in icons like Taylor Swift, reclaiming her masters and owning her narrative, or Rihanna, redefining business and beauty across the globe. These narratives converge to show that courage, creativity, and self-belief are the core ingredients of meaningful success. And then we pause to reflect on comebacks like Brendan Fraser reclaiming the spotlight, or Britney Spears asserting her voice and autonomy after years of trials. Their journeys underscore that resilience is a lifelong practice and not a momentary achievement. And if we pull back even further, we recognize that every young artist working tirelessly in a studio or on a stage or on a screenplay is engaging in the same universal dance. The one Blake participates in, the one Ryan Reynolds does, the one Dwayne Johnson did. All of them are translating effort into opportunity and potential into impact. And that is the true marvel. The invisible thread that binds Hollywood with global entertainment, that connects Blake Lively's unsigned contract to every heartfelt performance, every inspired album, every act of courage, that has ever made us cheer or cry or believe that we too can create something lasting. And even as we end this segment and prepare to continue exploring more global stars, the pattern is clear. The unsigned contract is not a limitation. It is a promise, a placeholder for all that can yet be achieved, and that promise is mirrored in every aspirant, every creative, every person who dares to dream, knowing that timing is everything. Patience is powerful, and belief in oneself is the ultimate, contract signed or unsigned. And as we journey further through this ever-expanding constellation of stories and dreams that began with Blake Lively and her unsigned IEWU contract, we start to notice that what connects all these stars is not just talent or fame, but a persistent spark of belief in themselves and the courage to step into unknown spaces, knowing that success is never guaranteed. And that spark can be seen in the trajectory of someone like Emma Stone, who quietly honed her craft in small theater productions before breaking out in La La Land and winning her Academy Award, proving that patience, preparation, and authenticity can coalesce into unforgettable moments, or like Riz Ahmed, who overcame stereotypes and carved his path from independent films to Hollywood recognition, showing that representation and hard work can shatter ceilings. And then we zoom across the globe to India, where actors like Ranveer Singh embody charisma, dedication, and fearlessness, showing that energetic commitment to craft, combined with charm, can create global resonance. And when we consider all of these trajectories, it's clear that the unsigned contract Blake held is less about hesitation and more about strategic vision. The idea that sometimes holding space for The right opportunity is as powerful as seizing every chance immediately, and that philosophy is echoed in stars like Viola Davis, who spent decades perfecting her craft before receiving her Emmy, Tony, and Oscar, creating a triumphant narrative that underscores that mastery is a lifelong journey. And that same energy vibrates through the story of someone like BTS, who turned late nights in dorm rooms into international stages through discipline, resilience, and creativity, proving that teamwork and shared vision amplify impact. And if we think about music icons like Beyoncé, whose meticulous attention to artistry and branding transformed her into a global powerhouse, we see parallels in Blake Lively's approach of balancing roles with family life and entrepreneurship, creating a life that is intentional and sustainable. And then we move to legends like Meryl Streep, who remains at the pinnacle of film, after decades showing that consistency coupled with courage to take risks creates enduring relevance, or Leonardo DiCaprio, whose patient pursuit of meaningful projects led to a long-awaited Oscar win, reminding us that timing and persistence are inseparable in the journey to recognition. And then we can't help but notice how these arcs mirror smaller but equally inspiring stories like Simu Liu, who navigated casting setbacks and personal uncertainty to land his breakout role in Marvel's Shang-Chi, proving that preparation and optimism can intersect in life-changing ways, or Dua Lipa, whose bedroom recordings became global hits, showing that raw authenticity resonates universally. And when you string together all these narratives, the invisible thread becomes clear, that whether it's Blake holding an unsigned contract dreaming of Oscars, or Keanu Reeves quietly giving back while starring in blockbusters, or Rihanna revolutionizing business and music, the essence is courage, belief, and intentionality. And then we pivot to comebacks like Brendan Fraser, who reclaimed a spotlight that seemed lost, or Robert Downey Jr., who reinvented himself from struggles to Iron Man. And in every one of these comebacks, we see that failure is not fatal, but rather a recalibration for future triumph, and even beyond Hollywood. We see this reflected in global icons like Shakira, who started in Colombia with humble beginnings before performing on the Super Bowl stage, showing that dedication and authenticity can translate across cultures and industries, or Malala Yousafzai, whose bravery transformed education advocacy into worldwide influence, reinforcing that courage and conviction ripple far beyond the individual. And back in the world of entertainment, we see emerging stars like Florence Pugh and Timothée Chalamet, who quietly refine their craft while taking bold creative risks, illustrating that the pursuit of excellence is both humble and audacious simultaneously. And it's beautiful to realize that Blake's story with IEWU is really a microcosm of this universal pattern, the quiet patience, the strategic pauses, the hope infused with preparation, because sometimes the biggest wins are the ones you prepare for in silence before they are recognized publicly. And then we weave through music once more. From Adele, whose intimate songwriting captured the hearts of millions, to Ed Sheeran, who turned bedroom compositions into stadium anthems, showing that storytelling and emotional resonance are the universal currency of success, and that energy reverberates. In stars like Taylor Swift, reclaiming her masters and asserting ownership over her art, showing that vision paired with courage can reshape an industry. And then across the Atlantic, we find the artistry of Idris Elba, balancing acting, music, and DJing, demonstrating that multiplicity of talent combined with discipline can amplify one's influence. And when we reflect on all these interconnected lives, we see that Blake's IEWU contract is emblematic of the delicate balance every artist navigates between ambition and timing, between action and patience, between vision and opportunity. And the same principle holds true in sports, where athletes like Naomi Osaka and Cristiano Ronaldo demonstrate that talent is magnified by persistence, discipline, and belief in oneself. And back in the entertainment sphere, we see the global resonance of characters like Keira Knightley or Zendaya, who evolve with poise and authenticity, proving that longevity is a product of continuous learning, adaptability, and integrity. And then we can't ignore the power of comebacks and reinvention, like Britney Spears asserting her autonomy, or Brendan Fraser reclaiming admiration, showing that persistence and courage in the face of adversity create inspirational moments that transcend awards and contracts. And then we reflect on the stories of entrepreneurs turned artists like Rihanna or Priyanka Chopra, who leveraged their platforms to redefine influence globally, showing that the intersection of vision and action shapes culture. And when we consider Blake Lively's path, we see someone curating her journey with thoughtfulness, blending family life with brand development and artistic exploration, creating a narrative that feels intentional and inspirational. And then we witness the ripple effect of such narratives in new voices like Billie Eilish, who cultivated a fan base through authenticity and intimacy, proving that relatability and originality can create massive impact, or BTS, whose global presence demonstrates the power of collaboration, resilience, and shared vision. And through it all, we come back full circle to Blake, whose unsigned IEWU contract is not just a curiosity headline or Oscar clause, but a symbol of the artist's journey, the quiet confidence to wait for the right moment to shine, the willingness to let timing and opportunity intersect perfectly. And when we expand the lens even further, we see that this lesson transcends celebrity from local artists, striving for recognition to athletes training in obscurity, to students and creators daring to pursue their dreams. Every single story resonates with that same energy. Patience, belief, and courage create a foundation upon which extraordinary results are built, and as we continue to traverse this universe of ambition and triumph, we notice the pattern repeats: persistence shapes destiny, authenticity creates connection, and strategic patience leads to opportunity. And in the quiet spaces between contracts, awards, premieres, and accolades lies the real story. The story of human potential, of dreaming without surrendering, of building without rushing, of believing even when recognition has not yet arrived. And that is the true power of Blake Lively's unsigned IEWU contract, a testament not to hesitation, but to vision, a mirror reflecting the journeys of countless stars and creators across the world who continue to inspire us to imagine more, believe more, and create more, knowing that the right moment is always worth the wait. And as we move deeper into the ever-unfolding story of Blake Lively and her unsigned IEWU contract and the ripple effect it has across the entertainment world, we start to see how every pause, every calculated decision, every moment of patience reflects a philosophy shared by countless global icons who have navigated fame, fortune, and challenge with courage and intention. Because the truth is, success is rarely a straight line. It is often a winding path filled with setbacks, small victories, and moments of quiet reflection. And that is why Blake's moment with IEWU feels so resonant. It is less about the contract itself, and more about the philosophy behind it. The belief that timing matters, that self-awareness and vision are as valuable as awards and money, and that same mindset can be traced through stars like Meryl Streep, who meticulously chose her roles across decades, creating a legacy of depth, range, and authenticity, or Leonardo DiCaprio, who patiently built a career that led to a long-awaited Oscar win. Each step measured, intentional, and reflective of the belief that craft and perseverance ultimately outlast fleeting fame. And then we zoom to the world of music, where icons like Adele and Taylor Swift remind us that vulnerability paired with artistry can move millions of hearts, and that preparation and patience are as much a part of the story as the performance itself. And when we cross the ocean to Asia, we see similar arcs in K-pop stars like BTS, who transformed tiny practice rooms into global stages through discipline, creativity, and teamwork, proving that dedication knows no borders, and that the principles guiding Blake's career resonate universally. Passion, persistence, and vision combined with strategic patience create a foundation for enduring impact. And speaking of vision, we cannot overlook actors like Zendaya, whose transition from Disney Channel to Emmy-winning performances demonstrates that authenticity and careful career choices can carve a path to timeless relevance. And then there are comebacks like Brendan Fraser, whose return to acclaim brought tears of joy to fans who had followed him for decades, or Robert Downey Jr., who transformed personal struggles into the iconic character of Iron Man, showing us that resilience is a lifelong practice and not a momentary victory. And then when we consider global stars like Priyanka Chopra bridging Bollywood and Hollywood, or Rihanna redefining business, fashion, and music, we see that vision combined with calculated risk can amplify influence exponentially. And the through line connecting all these journeys is the same as Blake Lively's unsigned contract: the willingness to hold space for opportunity to mature to align with one's values and vision. And then we travel to the stories of emerging stars like Florence Pugh and Timothée Chalamet, whose careful choice of indie films and bold creative risks has set them apart, showing that a thoughtful approach to career and craft pays dividends over time. And then we witness the power of artistry in music, with Billie Eilish creating global phenomenon from intimate bedroom recordings, or Ed Sheeran turning simple, heartfelt songs into stadium anthems, proving that authenticity and emotional resonance are universal currencies that cross borders and cultures. And then there is the recurring theme of comebacks like Britney Spears reclaiming her voice in Agency or Brendan Fraser's resurgence, highlighting that human perseverance and courage inspire beyond the stage or screen. And then we reflect on sports icons like Naomi Osaka balancing performance and mental health, or Cristiano Ronaldo's relentless training regimen and global influence, showing that discipline, courage, and self-belief are universal, regardless of field. And then returning to Hollywood, we find actors like Keanu Reeves, whose humility and generosity touch millions, proving that fame can coexist with deep humanity and kindness. And then we see the careful craft of actors like Emma Stone or Riz Ahmed, whose dedication to small roles and continuous learning has led to transformative performances, showing that longevity and relevance are built from incremental effort and intentionality. And then we find the international resonance in artists like Shakira, performing from Colombia to global stages, or Malala Yousafzai, transforming adversity into worldwide advocacy, showing that courage and consistency have influence far beyond immediate fame. And when we reflect on all these stories, Blake's unsigned IEWU contract emerges as a symbol of patience, vision, and timing. A quiet yet powerful reminder that the journey is as important as the accolades that await at the finish line. And then we see that in every corner of the entertainment world, emerging talent echoes the same principles. Young creators refining craft in small studios or local theaters, embodying the same commitment to excellence, the same belief in self that propelled stars like Blake or Priyanka or Zendaya to global recognition. And then we recognize that across decades and continents, the themes are repeated: resilience, adaptability, humility, courage, and strategic patience, all converging to shape enduring impact. And then as we continue to trace these threads, we witness the beauty of timing and action, like Jennifer Lawrence taking breaks to reflect and recharge before returning to acclaim, or Dwayne Johnson building a global empire from humble beginnings, proving that vision plus persistence creates opportunity. And then we consider the power of collaboration, like BTS or Lin-Manuel Miranda, transforming passion projects into cultural milestones, showing that teamwork amplifies talent and vision. And then we revisit the magic of transformation, like Robert Pattinson evolving from Twilight fame to critically acclaimed performances, or Brendan Fraser's emotional return, reinforcing that resilience and reinvention are vital in sustaining careers. And then we pause to admire how vision and patience manifest in music, with Beyoncé meticulously crafting surprise albums that dominate global conversation, proving that artistry paired with strategy is unstoppable. And then the lesson crystallizes across industries that holding space for the right moment is often more powerful than rushing into recognition. And that is the essence captured by Blake Lively's unsigned IEWU contract, a symbol of deliberate timing, of courage in the face of uncertainty, and of faith in one's own path. And then when we expand the lens, we see this philosophy echoed in every field. Oprah Winfrey transforming childhood adversity into empowerment for millions, or Rihanna defining industries through creativity and business acumen, or Malala inspiring educational reform, showing that patience, courage, and vision yield influence that transcends fame. And then we reflect on the constant emergence of new stars: Florence Pugh Timothée, Chalamet Billie Eilish, Simu Dua Lipa, whose dedication to craft authenticity and innovation continues to redefine excellence, showing that the principles behind success are timeless and universal. And then we arrive at the connective tissue. Across all these narratives that makes Blake's story resonate so profoundly, patience, preparation, belief, strategic timing, and courage are the ingredients that transform potential into impact. And then we understand that the unsigned contract is not hesitation or fear. It is intentionality. It is the quiet knowledge that the right moment amplifies effort. That opportunity, when aligned with vision, becomes extraordinary. And then we look at comebacks and resilience once more. Britney Spears, Brendan Fraser, Robert Downey Jr., showing that setbacks are recalibration, not failure, and that courage is cultivated through experience. And then as we continue this journey across decades, continents, and industries, it becomes clear that the core, human themes of persistence, authenticity, courage, vision, and timing are universal, and that Blake Lively's unsigned IEWU contract is a brilliant mirror reflecting those same principles in action for anyone watching, listening, or dreaming of their own extraordinary path. And in that realization, the story expands infinitely. teaching us that whether in Hollywood music, K-pop, global cinema, sports, or advocacy patience, courage and self-belief remain the ultimate currencies, and that every small choice, every strategic pause, and every leap of faith contributes to a legacy that is enduring, impactful, and inspirational. And that is the magic, the lesson, and the heart of Blake Lively's Unsigned IEWU contract, a story about possibility, timing, vision, and courage that resonates far beyond the page, far beyond the headlines, and far beyond Hollywood, into the lives of every dreamer daring to imagine more, believe more, and create more. Subscribe for more emotional celebrity documentaries, pop culture storytelling, and inspiring journeys from stars worldwide.